I just got done watching The Boogeyman. This is based off a Stephen King short story. I went into this very excited because I love Stephen King. Now, I'm not familiar with this short story per se, but I saw that poster and I did not want to see this thing because, first off, those two golden eyes when I was younger. I vividly remember looking down a hallway, seeing two golden eyes just staring at me. And maybe that was the Boogeyman at one point in time in my life, but it scared the shit out of me. It's always stayed with me. And I went into this film thinking, yeah, I'm probably gonna scream, probably gonna, relieve myself of some sorts. And I didn't. I actually found this film to be pretty disappointing, sometimes frustrating, and in the end of the day, just okay. It's overall just a very cliche horror film that you've seen before. And maybe you'll feel different because movies are so subjective. Everyone feels so different on them. Specifically when it comes down to horror and comedy, it feels like those two are like the most distinct. It comes down to your own and actual thoughts. So I'm excited to talk about this movie nonetheless. With that said though, if you are new here, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below your guys' thoughts. What's your favorite Stephen King adaptation that has come from books to movies? And I'm talking more in the horror realm, so let's keep Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile out of here because those are just easy ones to pick. But what is this movie about? Well, The Boogeyman, it's about high school student Sadie Harper and her younger sister Sawyer, who are still reeling from the recent death of their mother. They're not getting much support from their father, Will, who is a therapist who's also dealing with his own intense pain. When a desperate patient unexpectedly shows up at their house seeking help, he leaves behind a terrifying supernatural entity that preys on a family and feeds on the suffering of its victims. Now, one thing I want to say is that genuinely I did actually forget, like midway through watching this movie, I forgot that this was a Stephen King adaptation. And I always feel that when you go into a Stephen King adaptation of a horror film, you always have to take back and reel back that it's not going to be a straight up horror film. And something to be warned on that is that this film is not all jump scares galore and straight throwing everything at the fire and making you absolutely feel intense. It does have a slow burn to it and a very thematical one at that, as it does really much touch on grief, mourning, loss, and this entity itself and what it feeds on is very important in the way that it reflects and takes away our lives and our loved ones. Now, looking at that on here, I found that to be very great on a surface level approach, at least. And I'm going to talk about that more when we get to my cons, but that's something that I do think a lot of people need to put into perspective when watching this film. Just forget when I jump into a Stephen King adaptation that it's going to be something like that. And once it finally clicked in for me, I was like, okay, like, I kind of get what Rob Savage was going for here. And I'm a big fan of Rob Savage, and starting with my pros, I think him as a director is actually one of the stronger aspects of this film. Whether it's the way that he shot the movie or effectively hid the creature just enough for you to kind of formulate your own eyes and opinions on where that creature might show up, Rob Savage has shown that he is a very good director. And specifically when you go and look at one of his previous films, his first film I ever saw was a film called Host. And if you never got to see this thing scared the shit out of me. Not in particularly the whole thing, but there was really effective jump scares in there. And I was kind of hoping for the same thing with The Boogeyman. There are still pretty effective jump scares, but you can kind of see where they're going to come from. We'll talk about that later, but I still think Rob Savage is a good director, and I think his direction here is one of the saving graces of this movie. But truly enough, actually, the main reason to see this movie is three things. One, Sophia Thatcher as Sadie Harper in here is absolutely incredible. I think she is honestly giving a great performance in a horror film, and probably one of my more favorite ones that I've seen in a recent horror flick as that. It's her dealing with the loss of her mother as well trying to raise her sister. There's a lot of elements in there, and specifically how you can feel for the pain that her character is going through. And she's a very likable character that instantly she's likable because of the performance, and I really like what Thatcher was able to do here. Alongside that, Vivian Liara Blair, who maybe a lot of you guys recognize as Princess Leia from Obi-Wan Kenobi. She is excellent in here. And a lot of times when you watch horror films, the kid is always the most annoying part. What they did with Blair's character on a writing level, as well as just a performance, was very executed in such a great manner, and I'm happy that Blair got something like this, because again, this character could have been very annoying, not because of the performance, but just in general in the way that they wrote her, and I really liked what they did with Blair. I do want to give a shout out to Chris Messina in here. I wish they used him a little bit more, but I thought he was pretty damn good for what they did. Same thing goes for David, I'm gonna mispronounce this, but David Dishmalshin? I always mispronounce that damn name, but he is a great actor, and I thought, again, he did a good job, just not enough of him. Really much the other third thing that I wanted to mention is the creature. I'm a big fan of creature designs. I love going into films and getting to see what kind of unique creature designs you're going to get, and that can kind of be a saving grace in some eyes for me. Now, while I think they used the creature pretty damn effectively, there are certain things I would have liked to have seen the creature used differently in, but I can still go nonetheless in saying that when you do see the creature, every little tidbit of this thing is so freaking cool and unique that I just wanted to keep seeing more of it. It kind of reminds me of a film called Antlers that came out like 2 years ago. I was so psyched for that movie, and in that film I kind of walked away also disappointed, but I loved the creature design in there, and that was a saving grace for that movie, and kind of the same thing for The Boogeyman as well. That is where I start to kind of end all my major pros. Let's jump into my mixed aspects, and my mixed aspects can kind of go hand in hand with my issues with the movie. Some of it is this film's very deja vu. You don't really see anything new here. The creature, sure, I haven't really seen a lot of this, and the performances, yeah, they're good, but you've seen everything else. You've seen the story. You've seen a creature preying on the mourning and grief of someone. It actually seems very, like, tied back to Smile in some way, shape, and form. Like, this actually feels very much like I just saw Smile, and Smile, for me, was the more effective version of this film. I don't know if maybe I didn't see Smile before this. Maybe I would have thought a little bit differently, but I found that Smile was the more effective version, specifically tonally, and as well as what they tried to do with the monster. And in this one, it's kind of like the same thing. Everything felt so surface level approached, whether it was the father, the daughters, and seeing all the mourning. It's like, I've seen this so many times before. There's a lot of cliche aspects when it comes down to the main daughter, Sophia Thatcher, and specifically what she's dealing with at school and how kids are treating her. And when you're talking about predictability in there, you can see point A to point B to point Z, that I knew instantly how this film was going to end by the second Sophia Thatcher opens like a certain box. I knew exactly right then and there how this was going to go about. And it took away a lot of the tension. And again, this is all because it's deja vu. I have seen this film before, which may not bother a lot of people. And if you don't want to go in a different route, then give us a little bit more of a deeper thematical avenue to join into. Going hand in hand with that is the jump scares, which some were fun and some were effective for sure. But as for me, for people who don't know, I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to things. I didn't jump, like, whatsoever. And I expected to, because of how the film just looked in general, from like the poster, the trailer, and watching the movie, I could literally point out when a jump scare was going to happen. When I go to my horror movies, I just expect a little bit more from them overall. So in the end of the day, The Boogeyman's fine. It's okay. There's not too much that, like, I could sit here and hate on the movie overall, and there's not a lot that I can sit here and praise. I thought the performances were good. I thought the direction was solid. I thought the creature was awesome, but everything else was very middle of the road. The story you've seen before. Cliche. You can point out the point A, point B, point C. You know exactly where it's going to go. Alongside, same with the jump scares, you knew exactly what was going to happen, and it kind of lacked some tension at certain points. I still like what Rob Savage was trying to do, specifically in his direction, trying to mix a slow burn and specifically the thematics of the story alongside what matches with the creature. Everything else kind of just goes as far to show it's really hard to adapt Stephen King shorts, and I think if this short story was told in like an anthology series where you got like 10 directors and you take 10 of Stephen King's short stories and adapt them into a mini series, that for me I think would actually work a lot better. But in the end of the day, maybe you'll like this movie a little bit more than me. Honestly, don't have much more to say, so with all that said, I'm gonna give The Boogeyman a C. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. Let me know what your favorite horror film is of like the last year and a half or so. For me, I genuinely don't know. I'd have to actually look into that. So thank you so much again for watching this, and of course, until next time, stay classy.